We're here with the one and only Jaime Filer, the woman herself. She is a mentor of mine. I meet with her like every other week. She's one of the head people of the Trainer Revenue Multiplier, and she does amazing work. She's one reason why I've been successful with my business this year. When I decided to go all in and coach full time, it was a leap of faith. But luckily, with Matthew Park and Jaime Filer with the TRM, we're sitting comfortably now. We're making goals. We have goals that we didn't think we would be able to even think about. And, she has helped guide me. So why don't you introduce yourself, Jaime? We'll go from there.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm, dating profile. I'm 34. I live in Clearwater. So I'm 34. I live in Clearwater, married to fur babies. Immigrated from Toronto to Florida 5 years ago. No regrets, really happy here. I've been in the fitness industry all my life, personal trainer to start, followed by social media manager for bodybuilding.com. Before that was even a title. I then moved on to editor-in-chief of Canada's largest bodybuilding magazine. Then once I moved to America and could not hold a Canadian job anymore. That is when I started my online training business, found Matthew Park in the Trainer Revenue Multiplier program. And from there, the rest is history.
Right. Yeah. And, just a shameless plug if anyone wants to, take their training business to the next level, learn how to market themselves properly, and also charge your worth, then the Trainer Revenue Multiplier is something I highly, highly recommend. I've been in it for 7 months now, and if you have any questions on it, you can just send me a DM about it. So let's dig into the nitty gritty. One of the first questions I got was, how does your mindset impact your anxiety? Because today's topic is mindset and anxiety. And, like anything else, I would imagine that one thing impacts the other. Everyone that's mostly a trainer has anything to do with fitness. Something impacts something. Like your nutrition will impact your progress, your cardio or activity level will impact where you go. So how does mindset impact your anxiety from the get-go?
Oh my gosh. Great question. I think the most fundamental aspect of mindset that controls anxiety is if you are not in charge of what goes on up here, and rather your mind takes the reins over you, then anxiety is almost a guarantee, right? 100%. We have a very few things we can control in this world. Okay, we can't control other people. Sometimes we can't control our income. Like if, God forbid, there's a recession. Sometimes we can't even control what we put in our mouth, right? How many times have we sabotaged our diets? But the one basic human freedom is our ability to control our thoughts and our responses in certain situations. So if you allow your mind to do whatever the heck it wants, it's the equivalent of not training and letting your body do whatever the heck it wants, right? Your body is going to soften. You're going to atrophy. Probably going to dislike what you see in the mirror. Your mind is the exact same. It will turn into mush if you don't exercise control over it.
So kind of like the 40-year-old version where he says, if you don't use it, you lose it, huh?
It's exactly like that, Chris, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I've found that, growing up, I hated reading. I hated it. If I had a summer reading program, I was in accelerated programs my whole life, but I just hated reading and I wouldn't do it. And I was stubborn, but I found that, with my business, when I read, I actually enjoy it now. I feel so much calmer. I feel a sense of relief. And, we can train our bodies, but when we train our mind as well, you'd be surprised how much they coexist, right? When you train, sometimes the body's going to want to give out first. When you train, mind what might want to give out first. So you have to have strong bodies and strong minds. And that's something that, I preach in my household is we have strong bodies and minds. So I encourage my kids to always read, go outside. They're at my mom's house right now. They're outside playing. They're getting, they're getting their anxieties out for the day and just relaxing and enjoying each other.
Yeah. 1 second before you forget. before you move on, I'm sorry, before I forget, Andy Frisella, who owns First Form,
Sure.
he has a famous quote, and I don't even, he says it all the time, but I don't know if it is his quote. He says, the man who chooses not to read is no better than the man who doesn't know how to read.
Yep.
Because it's a total gift. And if you don't use it, like, what a loss, you know? It's almost as though you didn't even have the education in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the third world countries where, like, for some women, it's forbidden for them to have education, for someone to have that gift and not use it themselves. And there's a quote that I really love too. It's the day we stop learning is the day we stop progressing. So,
That's it.
be
That's it.
similar. And
Yeah.
I'm a proponent of knowledge is power. When I first started my business and started the Science and Gains Instagram, I had a hat made, and I still have it. It says knowledge is power. But I've since kind of, reiterated that because knowledge is power, sure, but it's nothing without application. So, you have
Absolutely.
to do
Yep.
something with it. So if, you're listening to this podcast and you have anxiety and you have this education that you're listening to from Jamie and you're not going to put into application, then, it's on you, right?
Yep. Then I'm just pure entertainment rather than education.
Just like Alvin says, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So what's the best way to help anxiety naturally? Because there's a lot of people, especially nowadays, with you and I being in the more homeopathic era of
Mhm.
fitness, a lot of people don't want to take the SSRIs or the
Sure.
anti-anxiety drugs. Now,
Yeah.
I do believe there is a time and place for it
Sure.
with anything
Okay.
for Western medicine. But if someone were to want to naturally go that route and try to um,
Yeah.
alleviate anxiety, what would you say?
Well, I'm going to say something borderline controversial.
Love
It's
it.
that I don't believe anxiety needs anxiety meds, because it's the kind of thing that can be controlled with your mind, right? It's literally been studied that depression is a chemical imbalance.
Right.
You're off. You're literally off. It's not your fault. I understand if you want to stay in bed all day, right? Do I encourage it? No. But do I understand it? Yes. Anxiety does not need to be treated with Ativan or lorazepam or any sort of benzo. All right. Because, with all due respect, and I can say this as someone who has anxiety, it's in your head. It's in your head. All right. You have caused the hormonal dysfunction as a result of working yourself up and messing
Right.
around with your cortisol levels and screwing around with your serotonin. You did that. I did that. So
Hmm.
it is up to you to subsequently course correct, pivot, and do what needs to be done. So, do I have natural remedies? Chris, I only have natural remedies because I don't believe that anxiety specifically needs a prescription.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That being said, number one, first and foremost, and I'm sure you can get behind me on this, is movement.
For
Not
sure.
necessarily exercise, but just walking, just forward movement to perpetuate the lateral eye movement that stimulates the amygdala to get blood flow in order to bring blood glucose levels down if you had just eaten and you kind of feel lethargic or shitty. Going outside to get some vitamin D to bring those levels up.
Yep.
So exercise first and foremost. That's because that's also something that's free. It's something that everyone has access to, right? Even if it's just in your house. All right.
Yep.
Up and down the stairs, pace your house. Don't even care. Get those steps in.
Yeah. And I've seen studies where brain activity has almost quadrupled from just taking a walk outside to sitting on your ass watching TV. And I'm
Right?
all for taking a day off and watching TV. I do
Sure.
that. I love movies. I love TV shows, but there's just something about feeling better, getting outside, walking, seeing the trees, even
Yep.
ground, getting outside, getting your feet in the grass and soil and getting back to nature. And it's something that, we do too, especially my house. If you check out my Instagram, you'll see where I take walks daily, or just some kind of movement. That way you sweat. Because, I mean, you can move, but if you start sweating a little bit, get that heart rate up a little bit, then that's where you're going to see a lot of that brain activity coming forward.
Absolutely. Oh, such a brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Could not agree more. The other thing about nature, and you mentioned the word grounding, is often anxiety is a result of thoughts that are swirling, right? And if you're in an environment, for example, my living room, right? I can navigate my living room with my eyes closed because there's nothing new or novel here. So when I get anxiety, I have to take myself to an entirely new environment because then I can ground myself in that tree because it's new, it's novel. I can focus on one branch. I can focus on one beehive, right? Or I can focus on my yard, how the soil feels underneath my feet, right? So just taking yourself out of the environment that you currently have anxiety in will be a game changer for you.
Yeah, and so Mondays are our business days, and we
Mhm.
try to get up early or stay up late Sunday night and clean the house, make sure our business area is clean because
Yeah,
it you feel better. You wake up like if you go to sleep in a clean house, it feels better when you wake up and you're at
totally.
your business in a clean environment, something stimulating. Like we have our desk by the sunlight. We have plants outside. We take morning walks in the morning before we get going. Those things kind of help us specifically.
Yep.
And yeah, like 100% that there's things that we can change because if I'm not mistaken, anxiety is, worrying about things that may happen, right?
Or
But
have happened in the past that you no longer have
and if
control over.
there's something that I can control, like my environment for sure, and changing things up, in my household, my wife, she changes up our living room and kitchen so many times. Like we move the TV here, 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 couches getting moved. Like we've probably
Oh,
had 30 setups in the past 5 years. But
oh my
the
God.
more I learn about anxiety and things, that's just her way of coping and changing the environment.
Absolutely. That's her, that's what we call you like her grounding technique.
Yep.
Second thing I would say is journaling, because I'm going to steal this from one of my clients. If you can name it, you can tame it. Like I said, anxiety, and like you indicated, anxiety is the disconnect between what's happened in the past and what might happen in the future that you have no control over. But if we get it down on paper and you see it, then it's so much more manageable. When you write out your problems, they're not as overwhelming versus the mountain that is created out of a molehill in your mind
Right.
when you seed and water and give those thoughts sunlight, right? When we put them on paper, they're starved of attention. It's just black and white, but the imagination that can run wild in technicolor in
Right.
your mind is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, and there's sometimes I'll stay up maybe about 30 minutes to an hour later at night, like I should do this tomorrow, I should do that tomorrow. And something my lazy ass will not get out of bed and brain dump when I'm thinking. I'd rather just not move at all and stay up for an hour thinking, thinking, thinking to see if it'll stick. So I need to do much better about my journaling and brain dumping before bed and
Yeah,
things like that. So I should probably I do have my little journal. I'll just keep it by my bed, wake up
I was.
and
Yep.
write it there.
Okay, so I have specifically it's a stack of post-it notes right beside my bed, and this happened yesterday because Katie and I got back from 6 days in Toronto, and I worked enough to take care of my clients, but like not as much as I would normally work in Florida. And I got home and we passed out around 9:30, and at 9:35, I turned on my little bedside lamp. I wrote out 10 things this morning, got it out of my head, as opposed to staying up till 10 or 10:30, just swirling with those thoughts.
Yeah.
30 seconds allowed me to sleep an hour earlier than I would have. And then again, I wake up in the morning, I rip the post-it note off, I bring it to my little, work area in the living room, and I'm so good.
Yep. There you go.
Yep.
Is there anything else you want to add to that? To things to do naturally besides
Um,
supplementation? Because that's a whole other question that we have.
yeah,
And
yeah. I'm trying to
try to
think.
keep that one very small and minimal because we could go on and on about that one.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say, like, if therapy is affordable and an option, by all means, go that route. I believe that a professional is probably more qualified to talk about that than obviously I am, or than a journal is. So again, if you can afford it and it's accessible, go for it. And then the last one is what I call a totem. Have you ever seen Inception, Chris?
Is that the movie where it's like a dream instead of a dream instead of a dream instead of a dream?
Yeah.
Love
Yes.
it.
Okay, so good. Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Leonardo DiCaprio, when they're in a dream or a dream within a dream, they have what's called a totem. And I believe for Leonardo DiCaprio, it's a top. And if he
Yes.
spins the top and it falls, it's real life, or there's
Right.
just like one level to the dream. But if he spins the top and it doesn't stop, it's a dream within a dream within a dream, right? So when you're starting to spiral in your anxiety, you need a totem. You need a compass that helps ground you to remind you that you're in reality. You are not in anxiety land, in a dream, in a nightmare that you cannot get out of. So, we talked about going outside. Okay, that's an option for some people, but what if you're in the middle of a Zoom meeting, right, with your boss and 20 other colleagues? You can't say, I'm just right, turn your video off and get your feet in the soil. You need something else to help ground you here and now. It can be doodling. It can be one of those fidget spinners, or the new thing is like the bubble popping.
Toppers, yeah.
Thank you. Okay. For me, it's answering questions in my DMs, because I'm not thinking about myself anymore. I'm thinking about people who have questions, right, about mental health or physical health. So I'm taken out of my own brain and kind of in theirs. So coming up with your own version of a totem when you're starting to spiral is probably the last technique I would recommend.
Interesting. Yeah. And that's something that anybody can use. If you can find something that you can hold in your hand, like you said, it can be anytime, any place, anywhere. And it can be very confidential. If I know back when I was in high school, the fidget spinners and the little cubes, huge.
Yeah.
And my thing is I tap a lot. So when I'm starting
okay.
pen,
Yep.
tap, or I chew the hell out of some pen tops. That's just who I am personally.
Sure.
And now, knowing what I know now, I may have had some form of anxiety. That was my way of doing it, and stimulating the senses. Yeah. So I guess that was my form of it, by just chewing and tapping pencils and all that.
Nothing
So
wrong.
next question, and we'll try to keep this short, is can there be a hormone imbalance that factors or contributes to anxiety?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure if your cortisol levels are off. I don't know well, I know that there are some people obviously who have naturally low levels of serotonin and dopamine. But again, to me, that speaks more to depression than anxiety.
Right.
To me, anxiety is fight or flight, right? It's adrenaline. It's oh my God. Yeah, fight or flight, fight or freeze. Any and every, what is that? The parasympathetic nervous system?
Yes, you have the parasympathetic nervous system, that's the fight or flight, and then the sympathetic.
Right. So if any of the neurotransmitters that help activate or deactivate those are off, we could have issues with anxiety.
Yeah, and I'll just speak on what I know just a little bit. So I do notice in women that have a lot of anxiety, they have low progesterone, and progesterone is a calming hormone with most women. So progesterone and cortisol, they use the same pathway, and if there's a ton of cortisol, as there would be with someone with anxiety, then progesterone can't make its way out. So you'll see low progesterone, and it kind of just doesn't allow someone to calm down on their own. So they may need another factor or someone else to help them. And I know, we see an endocrinologist, and Amber, she's open about it. She's had anxiety for 2 years now, and it's gotten so much better with supplementing with the progesterone. Of course, through our endocrinologist. I don't recommend anybody do things on their own without proper education, but with that, and just supplementing the detox pathways with NAC, glutathione, all those things really, really helped her. So I think that's as far as we'll go to keep it, with doing. Of course, we don't recommend anybody take any supplements without talking to your physician, right?
Also, getting a blood test that would indicate progesterone is low, right? NAC and glutathione you can take. That's like, you can buy those at Vitamin Shop. But yeah, progesterone is definitely a blood panel.
For sure. And one question that I had as well, is the last one that I have. Why do you specifically work with the LBGT community with anxiety? What sparked your interest there specifically?
It's gonna sound bad, but it's one of those things that was like started bad, but then turned into good. I noticed, Chris. So first of all, it's my community. I'm gay. I have a wife. I love her. I'm super open about it. No shame, and therefore it was just what I attracted. It was just what I put out into the universe. So I started getting more, LGBTQ plus clients, and it was fantastic. But then I noticed, Chris, that around certain times of the year or certain times of the month or certain seasons, they'd like all leave me. And it was due to their anxiety, right? Either I would give them a set of macros and they would be so overwhelmed by the instructions that they'd leave after less than a month, or it would be 3 months and they just didn't know if maybe they could swing it. I don't know, my anxiety, like what? Or, got right when COVID happened, everyone's like, I'm so anxious about going to the gym and I'm nervous about hurting myself if I train in the house. Like, I don't want to do this. So I said, okay, clearly there is a pattern with my clients. If I want to retain them and my income, I'm going to have to start addressing their anxiety and their mental health. So it started because I was losing clients way too quickly for my liking. And now it's just like, holy crap, I can help these people so much more with this extra knowledge and with this extra adjective attached to my niche.
But, that's all I have here. Unless you have anything else you want to talk about real quick, we'll keep this within, 25, 30 minutes and we'll.
I think the other biggest thing that I can say is don't try and go at it alone. If you hire me, fantastic. If you just tell your best friend who has no idea that you've been struggling, that would also work. If you never speak to Chris or I again, but this has inspired you to start going out for walks more, that will have satisfied both of us. So I just want to say you don't have to go at this alone. Tell somebody, do something, but you do not have to be stuck in the anxiety loop by yourself.
100%. And, if you were to ever reach out to Jaime or I, we're someone who will get back with you. She's a great person. She's always willing to help anybody, anytime. I've emailed her like odd times of the day and I always get an email back and she always has a smiling face. Like the Jaime you see here smiling is the Jaime I always see when I see you every other Tuesdays for our personal meeting and every Tuesday for our meeting. So, for those that are listening to my podcast, how can they find you if they want to work with you or see what you have to offer?
Sure. So I highly recommend starting with my Instagram. It's JAIM and then the number 91. Because I give a lot of just free advice about how to cope with anxiety. I like to think I'm entertaining. So entertaining, educational, inspirational sources there. And then if you want to work with me, just go ahead and send me a DM and we can talk about it.
Sure. And I think over 100,000 people think you're interesting as well because you have a pretty good following. So with that being said, we'll end it here, guys. I appreciate y'all listening and see y'all soon.